What's up, everybody? Happy Saturday. Thank you for clicking on the link. This is about to be my review of this past Wednesday's episode of Underground, Season 2, Episode 9, entitled Citizen. The directors and writers did a little something different this particular episode. You know, they actually showed you some things up front happening, starting, of course, with Cato, because that's where they left off last episode. And they actually went back, showed flashbacks of what led up to the situations. It was very strange, and if you weren't paying attention, you would have been a little bit confused about what was happening, because it appeared that they were showing scenes 2 and 3 times, but they weren't. They were actually showing you up front, and then they were giving backstory, which made it very interesting. I actually had to watch it twice, of course, to get the full gist of it, so I can make sure that I wasn't incorrect on my interpretation of what was going on in the episode. But anyway, let's get started, shall we? Okay, so like I said, it starts off when the episode comes on. They show this aerial view of the boarding house, and it hones in on the loft at the top window of the house. And you see Cato looking out of the window. This is the loft room up at the very top. And he's looking out of the window, and I think he was doing something to the curtains. And it occurred to me, and this may be my incorrect assumption, I don't know, but it looked to me like he may have been signaling somebody, and I'm assuming probably Patty Cannon and the rest of her gang. He was just signaling, giving them, you know, a sign that he was there, everything was a-okay, whatever. That's just me now. Y'all tell me what y'all think in the comments. But anyway, they show Cato walking around the house, and he's scoping it out, trying to find all the secret compartments and everything. And he's looking all of these secret hallways. And then he winds up in Georgia's, I guess, her bedroom or her office. And he's looking through the paperwork on her desk. And while he's doing this, Harriet is sweeping in the next room, and she catches him. And of course, she says, "What you doing in here?" She's obviously suspicious of him. And so she asks him this one question, but he never answers her, and he asks her, in turn, he asks her 2 questions. And he asked her, "Is this Georgia's room?" And then he asked Harriet, "Was she cargo?" And Harriet answered him back, and she says, "Yes, this is her room." And she says, "No, I'm not cargo." She told him she just helps around at the boarding house from time to time. Okay. And she also told him her name was Minty. She didn't say Harriet, she said Minty. Okay, which I think was smart on her part. And then she tells him, she said, "I already done answered 2 of your questions, and you didn't answer the one that I asked you." Y'all know how Harriet is. She comes straight and direct every time she talk to you. She ain't playing no games with nobody. Okay. So then Cato tells her that he is looking for Georgia because he wants to thank her for what she's done for him and how she allowed him to stay in her house and everything. And so at this point, Harriet, she's still looking at him real ice cold like, and she starts to warm up a little bit to him. And then Cato tells her that he heard that some of them might be moving, talking about the cargo. He said some of them are going to probably be moving soon. This is what he heard. And like I said, he wants to thank Georgia. Well, Harriet tells him that Georgia is in the kitchen. And once again, she says, "My name is Minty." So that's their conversation. You could tell she's looking a hole straight through him. She didn't trust the word that he's saying. She's trying to figure him out. Okay. So then they show Cato still lurking around the house. And he actually was standing upstairs, and he opened the door to where you can look down the stairs and see people in the kitchen. He looked down and he overheard Georgia and Liz talking. And they happened to mention that Rosa is on her way back with her family. So he goes back to Patty Cannon, and he reports back to her that night, and he tells her that he needs more time. Now, see, Patty done became impatient with him, and she says her niggers is resting comfortably in the station houses, and her money is missing. That's what she's concerned about. She's trying to make money, and she needs to get her money, and she don't like the fact that her niggers is resting at the boarding house. Okay, so she tells him that his plan isn't working. And Cato tells her that there was a woman there sweeping the floors that matched the description of Harriet. But Patty doesn't believe that Harriet would be there sweeping floors, because she's too popular and too famous. She don't believe that she'd be sitting around nowhere sweeping no floors for nobody. Patty says that Cato may be trying to escape and trying to get up north on his own, with the other people's fault that she knows. So at this point, she's not trusting Cato because he's been at the boarding house for like 3 days and he hadn't brought her back anything that she could use. But like I said, Cato tells her he needs more time. So at that point, Cato jumps and grabs for a knife. The men in the room pull out their gun because they don't know what he's doing. But he grabs for this sharp knife and he takes the knife and he tells Patty, he said he's right where he wants to be and that he's staying there until he gets what he needs. He's staying at the boarding house. Then he slits his wrist deeply so that he starts bleeding real heavy to show Patty that he's serious. I was like, what is this fool doing? Is he actually cutting his wrist? Well, yeah, that's what he did. So anyway, they show Cato back at the boarding house. He's getting nursed by Liz after he done bled all everywhere and stuff. And Cato wonders if she's going to ask him why he's done what he's done by slitting his wrist, because George and them asked him. He said that she had asked him what happened and he wanted to know why Liz didn't ask him. But Liz says that she already knows why. She says she believes that he's angry about something bad that happened to him that he couldn't do anything about, and she's partially right about it, but that's not the real reason. So Cato asks what happened to her. She tells him about her husband John being shot in the head right in front of her. Cato suggests that it's more than just the death of her husband. Is that she now knows something that she can't unknow. The same thing that black folks have always known. She says it's fear. Fear of basically of white men being able to do whatever they want whenever. So Cato tells her that there's no place for fear. She says it belongs either in or out, but she's not sure where is best. So Cato tells her that she has to pull that fear in and then she's got to push it out. She has to become the monster that has come to eat her. She's got to get so scared that she's got to scare them back, is what he tells her. So basically, he's talking to her kind of like John Brown would talk to her. And she's already interested or in agreement with John Brown's ways. So what he says to her basically is a confirmation of what she needs to do and how she needs to be. So Cato gets up that night to go roaming around the house and he sees somebody leaving. Now, it's Liz leaving with a gun, but I don't think he sees her at first. But anyway, he follows behind her, and he finds Liz. At some point, they get outside, and he follows her to a burning barn. And he goes in, and he finds Liz unconscious on the floor of the barn. And then we see him washing himself off in a swamp. Patty comes and finds him there, and he tells them that they have exactly 2 more days to do and get whatever it is they need to get. Okay, so then they show a flashback. All of this is happening up front. So then they show a flashback of the day that Cato actually came there. Liz is back at the boarding house when this scruffy man, this man with this beard, he comes in and he asks for a room. Liz doesn't trust him, and so she reaches for a gun. And she asks this man his name, and he says in a smart way, he says John Hawks. We all know that's Liz's husband's name. So she looks at him crazy. And then this man insults her deceased husband by saying that he wasn't that smart and that he got what he deserved. So at that point, Liz grabbed back and slapped the fire out of him at this point. And then he looks at her and he leaves. Well, Liz goes and she tells Georgia that they need to do something. Georgia is being stupidly aloof about it, saying that they should actually leave it alone because he left and nobody got hurt. Well, Liz tells you can't just let this man come to this house and do what he did and not do anything. We know how Liz is. Liz is vigilant at this point. Liz tells her that this is the man that actually had her tied to a tree that night. He was the one that kidnapped her and John and tied her to that tree. He had to remind her of that. So, let me see. What did Georgia tell her? Georgia tells her to leave it alone because no one got hurt. She doesn't want to draw any more attention to the house. Liz just couldn't reconcile the fact that Georgia had given her a gun when she first came there. But Georgia tells her that she gave her that gun for protection, not to go around starting trouble. So this conversation that she's having with Georgia is actually a flashback of the conversation that Cato had overheard that day. The one where he looked down, he had opened the door and overheard them talking about Rosa Lee coming back with her family. This is that conversation, okay? So she keeps talking to her and they're having it out and there's tension between them at this point. Georgia told her once again, she says it could have been worse. It could have been worse. And if it had been her, it would have been worse. Georgia didn't tell Liz that she passes for white simply because there's a sense of safety in being white. And she insinuates that Liz thinks that she's invisible because she is white. And of course, Liz gets mad with her and tells her that that's not fair. Georgia tells her it may not. She said, but any retaliation on her part would threaten the safety of the runaways at the station. So Liz has to leave it alone at that point, okay? So then they show a flashback of the night that Cato cut himself. They're going to let you know what leads up to that. The night he cut himself and he came back to the boarding house, and he actually dripped blood all on the floor at the boarding house. And what happened was when he fainted at the boarding house, because by the time he got there from Patty Cannon's wagon or her trail or whatever, he had started to, lose a lot of blood, and he probably drained him. And so Liz came there and found him. They wanted you to see what happened in full context. So they show that same conversation that they showed before of him and her talking about fear and what she needs to do with it. So then they show a flashback of the night that Cato actually followed Liz. Liz found Cato unconscious. I'm sorry, y'all. They show a flashback of the night that Cato found Liz unconscious in the burning barn. Liz had gone to the barn, which was owned by that scruffy man that had come there, that she slapped that day, the one that had tied her to a tree. See, Liz was going to get him back, okay? That was the night that Cato followed her out. When she snuck out that night and he followed her to he followed her to the cabin is what he did, and he hid out behind a tree. And while they were out there, she's the one that went in there and actually started that fire in that man's barn. And what had happened was when she came out from lighting the barn on fire, she noticed the man's child. He winds up going into the barn. He's the one that woke up and he yelled for his mother. And the child went in the barn. And so Liz runs back into the burning barn to save the child. But she winds up fainting under the smoke herself. So what you see next, somehow she winds up on the back of a wagon. Cato probably saved her. And the next day they were at the hospital, I think. They had to be at the hospital, her in Georgia. And Liz and Georgia was standing there watching the child as he was being nursed on. And Georgia tells Liz that she was wrong. And Liz said that boy is really just like his daddy. He was taught to own slaves, and he probably feels entitled. Now, Liz didn't want the boy to die, but she was letting Georgia know that this child was most likely just like his father. So there's no reason to really feel bad for him like that, because he'll probably grow up and own slaves himself. And of course, Georgia tells her, you don't know that. He could be different. He may change. And Liz tells her, you think I'm cold-hearted, but I'm not. She says, she starts to quote one of John Brown's lines about being complicit. And Georgia recognizes that quote and tells Liz that she's crossed the line now that she can't come back from. So Liz says that she's not heartless at all, but instead she feels very deeply. She says her heart breaks for that kid just like it does for those runaways. And Georgia reminds Liz that she brought this harm on that child. That's the difference between the slaves and this child, is that Liz did harm to him. So then Liz used Georgia's words against her, where she brought up a sense of safety transforming the spirit. Well, Liz says that inflicting total fear on the adversaries is what's going to win this war. Georgia tells Liz that she's going to have to leave her home if she thinks like that. So if she feels that way, she got to leave her house. Like I said, this is a very tense moment. She said, you got to leave my house if you feel like that, Liz. I can't have you here, because we know Georgia tries to be a peaceful woman, but Liz has different ideas about defeating slavery, okay? Georgia apparently thinks that Liz has become a dangerous person. So then they saw another flashback of the moment after Georgia and Liz had the heated confrontation in the kitchen. And Liz the day that she slapped the man. Well, Georgia goes into her office and she finds Harriet. Actually, Georgia is sitting in her office, and she tells Harriet when she comes in about Liz slapping the man. And Harriet says, good girl, good girl. So Georgia doesn't want Harriet to encourage Liz in any violent manner. Now, Harriet's about to leave on her week's journey to probably go and pick up some more slaves, and she has inquired about Cato, and she tells Georgia that she doesn't trust him because his answers come too easy from his mouth. She tells Georgia to keep an eye on him, and Georgia says, okay, I will. But Georgia's very concerned about Harriet traveling so far by herself, and Harriet tells her she's never alone, and that, of course, she meant that she has God with her everywhere she goes. So then they show Harriet in Ohio traveling. She's outside of a trading post where she sees a man putting up flyers about a wanted slave. And Harriet begins to take all these flyers down. Harriet's out there. She's been greasing her hair, sewing stuff together, and she's having fainting spells as she's traveling. Of course, she could be sitting on her horse, driving the horse, and she all of a sudden black out and whatnot. We know that happens to her. At some point, she arrives at an abandoned church. She goes in and she kneels down and she starts praying this very passionate prayer where she's actually second guessing herself and she's questioning whether or not she's qualified for this big task that's been set before her. And she's wondering whether or not she's doing the right thing. She says, should she be leading? She says the general or the captain, whatever John Brown calls her, the general. And she just wants to know, can she actually live up to that name? So she's questioning herself. So Harriet finally makes it to a safe house, and Rose and Noah are there. And I'm not sure whether or not she knew that Noah and Rose were there at this point. That's where I'm confused. But she does. She shows up, and Noah actually opens the door. So at this safe house that, of course, is owned by a white lady, the white lady is concerned about the fact that Rosalie burned down the big house. They're not far from where the big house is, okay, or was the night before, because the authorities are actually looking for them. There's Noah, Cora, and James all there. James is asleep. He still hadn't woken up from where Rosalie popped him in the head with that tray last week. So Noah reminds this lady that she's done this many times and that she's never been caught. He also tells her that if they go, the money goes. And the lady looks like she needs the money because the house is sort of run down looking. Spider webs and dust everywhere. So when he mentions money to the lady thinks about it. She changes her mind because she don't want to lose it. And she calms down and she tells them to stay away from the windows and be quiet. So after she leaves, Cora starts to question that particular safe house. She says, I don't trust that white lady. She said, you call this a safe house? And Rosalie pretty much tells her that the white woman is not going to tell on her. Cora tells her, she says, I don't know if I can believe you because you don't have the best judgment lately, thinking about everything that has happened. So Rosa tells them that if they follow Harriet's plan, they'd all make it out safely. So Rose is standing there changing her clothes, and Noah walks up behind her and asks her if she's feeling all right. She tells him that the baby is fine. She says he's fine, and she lets him know that she believes that it's a baby boy. So then James finally wakes up from that pop upside his head and everything, and Cora tells, she said, Rosalie, your brother done woke up. So then they show Rosa and James and Noah. They are actually in South Carolina at this point, and they are asleep in a stable loft. When they overhear noise down below, and Rosalie looks down and she sees Cora running in, and she overhears slave catchers behind her. Well, they wind up shooting Cora in the back. Now, they don't show how Cora got separated from them, but she gets shot in the back, and she's looking up at Rosalie. Rosalie sees them, and the men come and they actually drag Cora off, and there's this stream of blood that she's left behind. So it's common knowledge that at this point, Cora is going to wind up dead, okay? Or she has died. Sad, sad. Don't know how she got separated from him at all. So then you see Rosalie, Noah, and James being transported in the bottom of a wagon. At some point, they've made it to North Carolina. James starts asking how long it'll be until they don't have to run anymore, because they're on their way to Ohio. Well, Rosalie and Noah start explaining to him that they won't have to run for long. They're gonna wind up they're gonna meet Harriet at the next station, and they're gonna wind up catching a train and everything. Things are gonna be a little bit better. They tell him where he's going. He's gonna be able to go to school. He's gonna learn to read and write. He's gonna have friends, and he's even gonna see the little girl from last season. What's her name? What is that child's name? Boo. He's gonna see Boo. Rosalie asked him if he remembered Boo, and he said, yeah, I remember her. But he tells her that Mistress Suzanne was teaching him how to read and write anyway, but they let him know it's not the same. He's going to be free to make his own decisions now, because what he had at Miss Suzanne's house was not freedom. She controlled him. She was running things. So he acted like he understood. Now, at first, I thought James was going to be a problem, but James is not a problem at all. He's actually cooperating with Rosalie and Noah, at least for right now. So, And Noah told him, now you're going to be your own man. And James, like I said, he got that. Okay. So then Rosa and Noah and James finally make it to where Harriet is. Noah is in the room with her talking to her one night, and he mentions that what people say about her and God being able to talk to her. And she tells him that it's true. So Noah wants to know what he sounds like, and Harriet says, my old master. Noah wants to believe. He lets her know that he wants to believe in God. But he said he's seen so many things, so many bad things, but he doesn't see God in any of those things. Okay? And so then Harriet asked Noah what kind of trade he did. And Noah said he was a blacksmith. So Harriet says, you remind me of my father. He only believed what he could see with his own eyes, touch with his own hands, and hear with his own ears. Harriet says that all of that won't get him through. So then Noah says it got him this far. And she said, how? She basically was questioning, got you where? Harriet asked him what made him think that he could pull off traveling. She begins to question him. Like trivia. She says, what made you think you could travel 600 miles with the making 7? He says he didn't pull it off. He failed because only 3 of them survived. And then Harriet says, no, what made you think you could do it? Why did you do it? What made you believe that you could even try that? So as she was questioning him, he begins to get an epiphany about his belief that he did have at least a form of faith. And it dawned on him, I did believe. And she said, you once did have faith, but now you've lost it. So Harriet tells him that he needs to find it again. And he's got to be desperate and insane. Now, Noah is concerned about the fact that he's about to be a father and that he doesn't need to put himself in any more danger at this point. Harriet says that this war that they're fighting needs men like him. Noah and Rosa are up. She tells him that we need men like you. So she basically, out of her own wisdom, she convinced Noah that he did believe and that he did have faith at one time. So he got it and everything. So the next thing they show is him and Rosa. They're upstairs getting ready for bed. They done laid James down. And Noah is actually sitting there thinking and pondering. And Rosalie notices that he's kind of perturbed about something. And Noah gets mad with her because she tries to apologize, but he interrupts her. He gets mad and he goes off on her for not telling him that she was pregnant. She put his life in danger. She put the baby's life in danger. He says he was scared when he caught Bill about to brand her. He tells her that she's selfish for putting his baby in harm's way. He tells Rosa that she treated him like a slave and that she acts just like her father, Master Tom. And he leaves the room. So he done left her for a minute, okay? Then they show, because we get into the end now. So Noah is mad with Rosalie. He done walked off from her. I don't know if they're going to be able to make it. I hope he recovers. It's just a bad, tense situation. She was trying to explain to him that what she did, she wanted her family. She was trying to get her brother back and everything. That's why she didn't tell him about the baby. But you understand why Noah is mad. It's very understandable, okay? So then they go back and they show Daniel. They finally get to Daniel and they finally start showing us how he ties into this story. Daniel and his daughter one day are out scoping the big house where he is. And I think he's in Virginia somewhere. Wherever he's a slave at to see what's going on. Of course, we know Daniel is blind and can't see. So he's got his daughter being a lookout for him. And she was telling him everything that was going on. It was at the point the master's actually selling off the slaves down south because they done heard about John Brown coming. And everybody was scared. So all the slave masters was getting rid of their slaves. Or getting rid of most of them because they knew what John Brown was capable of. And of course, Daniel's daughter doesn't want to be sold off, and he doesn't either. He tells her that he's not going to let that happen, okay? Because they might get split up if they get sold off. So that night at Daniel's cabin, his wife tells him that there's only 9 slaves left on the plantation. And she's worried that they'll be sold too. So Daniel tells her about John Brown and that he may still be close by. So Daniel wants to seek John Brown out for help. And he tells his wife to just love him and pray for him when she asks him what she can do. And she says, be ready in case he fails. So he leaves and he's headed for work the next morning like he always is. But he doesn't go, he doesn't actually go to work. What he does when he gets there is he wanders over, he bumps into a group of white men. And he tells them that he's all out of sorts and stuff that he can't see. And they see that he obviously has problem with his eyes. But he wants them to point them in the direction of Ripley. So he uses his blindness at this point to his advantage because to most white people, a blind black man seems unthreatening. So, he's using it. Smart move on Daniel's part. So while he's in this new town, while he's in Ripley, he's walking down the street. Several people, black and white, are walking up and down the street. And Daniel overhears people talking about Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, the one, Uncle Tom's Cabin and everything. And he runs into this white man that wants to see his freedom paper. So Daniel gives him his working papers, and then he makes up this story that he's there on loan to work at the university. The man say the university is miles away from here. But Daniel told him, well, I'm over here because my master was kind enough to send me down here to find a cobbler to fix the strap on his leather bag. And the man buys the story, and he asks the man to point him in the right direction. So the man does. So Daniel he winds up at the cobbler shop, and he tells this man that he read an article about all the cobblers in that town and that they help runaways, basically. Daniel says that he's looking for John Brown, but this man pretends like he don't know what he's talking about. Okay? The man said he fixed shoes. He don't do politics. So Daniel is hoping this man will have some sympathy on him. So the man fixes his bag, and he doesn't charge Daniel anything. Daniel turns around to leave, but I guess the man felt sorry for him. And he said, excuse me, sir. He tells Daniel to turn around. He tells him to come back. So you don't see him anymore at this point. So then they go to Liz. Liz done packed up all her stuff, and she's ready to leave the boarding house. When she comes downstairs, who does she see standing in the front room? Nobody other than Daniel. The man did help Daniel get to the boarding house. And we figure out that this cannot be Steen's father. Of course, it's obviously not her daddy. But he is just another story. He's just another slave that is trying to get him and his family to freedom. So he's another slave. But I got a feeling he's going to play a bigger role, and I hope so. So basically, that's the end of it. He's another slave that's trying to get to freedom. Okay? That's who Daniel is. I'm so glad they didn't put a lid on that, because I was tired of trying to figure out what Daniel had to do with this story. But anyway, he's got his own independent story of freedom going on. So yeah, it was a lot of things going on. So basically, Liz was getting back at the man by going to his barn and burning it down to the ground. Okay? And she winds up causing his son to get hurt in the process. She has to leave the boarding house. I don't know where she's going from there. She's going to find those Lawrence boys or something and hook up with them, because Liz, at this point, Liz is, she's really angry. She's still mad and pissed off, and there's no telling what she might do at this point. Cato, don't know what he's going to do, but the fact that I believe that he helped Liz get out of that barn, he had to. Cato did that. It makes me wonder if he's really going to wind up helping Patty, because he's told Patty that he needs more time. So I think he's trying to think of a plan to help them to get rid of Patty and help George and them. So what do y'all think? I know I rambled as usual because there's so much going on in this episode. There's always a lot going on Underground, but it's very interesting and very good and very deep. And I just want to know what Cato's deal is. I want to know what's going to wind up happening. Is he going to help Patty for real? Does he really want to be where Patty is? I can't see him doing that for real. So anyway, we're going to see. He seems to be a little bipolar to me. But yeah, that's basically what has gone on. Rosalie and knowing them, I want to see what's going to happen with them too. Are they going to be able to make it? Are they going to be able to get through this problem that they have now? I hope Noah can get over what Rosalie did. I hope he can find it in his heart to try to understand why she did what she did. They've made it back. They're safe, at least for this moment. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, y'all put your comments down in the section below and let me know what you think about it. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.